Welcome to the Bourbon Barkeep Lounge. My name is Curtis. Happy to have you all back. If you are sitting in the lounge with me, you also know it is House Call Wednesday. House Call Wednesday is just a blind battle. We're just gonna have some bottles fight, and then we find out what they actually are. So instead of me being a fanboy of one of the bottles behind me, I just kind of strip it away and see if it's actually good or if I just really like the label, apparently. So without further ado, we have a bottle sitting next to me. It is pre-poured so they can air, breathe, and so you don't have to see me spill all over myself. For the first glass, we're gonna let it open up a little bit more by swirling, and that gives me time to remember to actually tell you to like and subscribe. I want to do it early because you could hate it, and I just kind of want to trap you early. So we'll see if that works. So far, not a ton. So let's finally nose glass A here. You can see I got at least different engraving. That's it. More for me, apparently. Ooh, like that. Maybe like a mixed berry Pop-Tart. A little bit of corn coming through, actually, but I do really like that kind of, candied strawberry jam, if you will, but definitely some pastry kind of coming through there. You got a little bit of a butter or like a richness. A little bit of vanilla. The more it's kind of sat here, more oak has kind of come through. Not a damp, just kind of smelling a barrel, just sticking your head in a barrel that was recently drained of beautiful whiskey. Let's dive in. It definitely sticks with like a red fruit. You could convince me it's raspberry, you can convince me it's cherry, but it's definitely red fruit and a little bit of vanilla bean. Maybe not like a vanilla syrup, but like a little bit richer, maybe. All right, let's taste it. Okay, growing. Whoa. That nose did not allude to that finish. Didn't complain about the ethanol, didn't complain about sticking my large schnoz into this glass. She hot. Real hot. It is very nice on the front of the palate, and then it just ramps up in heat and finish all the way through the stomach. I may take off my cardigan. It is pretty sweet. It does still kind of finish with maybe a corn, to where I don't know if that's kind of leading into maybe a youthfulness, but it does have a little bit more corn than what I typically like. That being said, there are a ton of pros and a ton of positives to this sip. What completely made me black out was I wasn't sure how hot it was going to get because it kept getting hotter, and I wasn't sure if I was having a heart attack or a really high proof whiskey. So let's see what second sip has and see if it's just as hot. Second sip, much smoother. So I don't know if that was kind of a first sip type of thing or first sip of the day, if you will, kind of getting acclimated. When you're going in nosing what you think is 95 proof, and it turns out to be what felt like 175, vastly different. There is a lot more caramel, vanilla, and cherry. It's a very traditional whiskey, not a ton that I can pull out, at least off the second sip. Extremely smooth, lingering on the tongue, great finish, and not as hot. So if you would have been worried after that first sip, my fear is now gone on the second sip. It's sweet. There's not a ton to write home about. It's just a damn well-made whiskey. finish is long plus, if you will. But if you can survive that first sip, you're in for a real treat, actually. So with glass B here, I couldn't imagine I'm putting what felt like 150 proof with 90 proof. So this one has a little bit of a step up, and I'm gonna assume that this is a little higher proof. We'll see if we can get that on the nose. I don't typically talk about color because it doesn't fully matter. It does, I guess, if you're blinding and trying to guess and keep score. But ultimately, when it comes to actually like tasting notes and what we're trying to accomplish here, it doesn't matter. But this is the equivalent of drinking maple syrup, whereas the other one, honey, vastly different. So I'm curious if that's due to age or maybe if this is finished. We shall see. Ooh, that's a nice nose. Very rich. I do have to say this is going to go a lot heavier and a lot darker than what Glass A would be. Thankfully, I called out the colors, so look at us. This one is heavy cherry, maybe a candied cherry, molasses, maybe some grape or raisin in there. Really like it. Very sweet, not a ton of ethanol, but we're not diving in head first this time. So you won't see me die. Real treat for everybody. Yep, she's hot. This is also like drinking a sweet tart, which I did not expect based off of how dark that nose actually was. A lot of tingle, a lot of cinnamon spice on the tongue. But it's like I baked a sweet tart in cinnamon. A red sweet tart, if you're gonna nitpick. On the initial first sip, as it starts to kind of just linger on my tongue, which it's still there, you have a little bit more of a licorice note to it. Not a large black licorice fan, but it's there. You still kind of get that sweetness with it, a little bit of a tang, if you will. Overall, it's good. This one feels to be hotter on the tongue, whereas the Glass A was hotter on the esophagus, if you will. And once again, if you're unfamiliar with body parts, this would be the time to Google. We may reference a few body parts above the waist. So we'll just kind of see. Let's dive in a second sip and see if it's just as hot, and we'll go from there. Second sip was very good. This is going to be a tough score. So when I start kind of going back to back, which you will not see because of time, I'll be very curious where we land because these are very good pours, very similar in terms of heat, longevity on the tongue, finish, but also one's a touch brighter, even though we got a sweet tart in Glass B. One of the things that we'll take into consideration is bang for the buck as well. So God help me if these things are close in price. So what we will do now is I'm going to revisit A, B, see if anything else has opened up. I'll try and communicate what has since opened up or not opened up, and we'll go from there. So see you in a second. Diving into the scoring. This one's going to be tough, so I'm going to try and be descriptive because I feel like some people will gravitate towards Glass A, and some will be Glass B, and as naive as what that sounds, these pours are so vastly different in terms of tasting notes. I want you all to make the right decision based off of not the scoring alone, but the tasting notes. Glass A, a little bit brighter. I can't remember all the tasting notes we were talking about at this point because I don't want to sit there and do 16 again, or 3, if there was 3. But ultimately it was brighter. It was still hot on the tongue. Both are going to be extremely long finishes and extremely hot. That being said, I felt like Glass A smoothed out a bit more. Glass B, on the other hand, much richer and much darker in terms of the flavor profile. So if you're gonna go bright and sweet or a little bit darker, that's going to dictate whether you pick A or B, not knowing price. But the finish is pretty close, if you will, maybe B being a touch hotter on the tongue. So, that being said, before we get into the price, the scoring for the senses on Glass A, I'm gonna go 73. Feels a little low, like I'm more tempted to go higher, but ultimately it kind of had a little bit of a youth to it with a little bit more corn coming through. So I just felt like it's lower tier good stuff. Glass B, on the other hand, the richness that was kind of coming through, I enjoyed it a little bit more today. Ask me tomorrow, could be a little different. I'm gonna stick with the good stuff category, and I think I'm gonna say 77. Just a few spots above. It's kind of what I'm in the mood for at this point. If I'm gonna have a higher proof, like what I think I'm tasting, if this is 95 proof, I'm gonna look like an idiot. But with the amount of proof that went into my body, I'm not having that during the day. So I would typically gravitate towards a darker profile at night anyways. So chances are I'm gonna lean towards Glass B typically. Now, let's get into what the price actually is. So Glass B takes it on senses alone. So based off of the randomizer that we actually used to actually pick what gets aired and what stays in the bin, if you will, we had 168 today. So I picked out 16 and 19 of the vials here. These guys, it's still so dark and there's so much sediment in there. God, I hope that's supposed to be there. Whew. Ladies and gentlemen, if you see on Instagram that Curtis Bourbonbarkeep passed away, it's the sediment. Whew. All right, so 16 Glass A is $45. That's a pretty smooth, what I believe to be a very high proof. That's very smooth. That's pretty damn good. Glass B, 19 is $90. Very good. That's also a high price tag. Oh, damn it. Bang for a buck's gonna sway this. For sure. So before we trudge on, I've mentioned this in past episodes, and I would like to think that this is honest enough to where once you kind of know the age and name, adjusting the bang for the buck is allowed, if you will. The example that I kind of lean on and probably will for the remaining of this channel at this point is the Knob 18. Did well in senses, did horrible in bang for the buck. You find out it's an 18-year bourbon, that changes what bang for the buck should be. So ultimately, we kind of give a little leeway on bang for the buck. So if one of these is 18 years old, maybe it hikes up bang for the buck. As we know today, without knowing what I'm actually tasting, and when I say we, I mean just me. And you just put yourself out here on these blinds. So for the people that are worried about bang for the buck, but still having a damn good whiskey, at $45, I'm gonna go 75. I mean, not knowing age and all that stuff that we've talked about, it's tough to find that clean of a taste, that long of a finish, quintessential kind of flavor profile at $45. I mean, if we're sticking with this 150 proof, if you will, which is a slight exaggeration, there's not much out there that is going to punch that hot in a good way. Yeah, 75. Glass B, on the other hand, I'm not going to dock it. It's definitely not below 50, which is kind of our baseline at this point. I'd go 65. I mean, it tastes great. It's rich. It does taste a little more mature, but at 90, I don't know. I mean, that's really hot. And then you're also above your Elijah barrel proofs, your Larceny barrel proofs, things like that, to where I would pick those personally over Glass B. So if you want to go into substitutes, there you go. So algorithm-wise, plugging it in, Glass A loses on senses, 73 to 77, wins bang for the buck, 75-65, which actually pushes it as our first bang for the buck winner, if you will. Yeah, I mean, like I said, double. Are you buying 2 bottles compared to the 1? Probably not, but ultimately it punches well above its weight. So now let's see what we were actually drinking. Battle 168, Glass A at 16, Blue Note unfiltered, uncut juke joint, 121.1 proof. That may be lower than what I thought it was. I probably was going, I may stick with the 150. That shit was hot. That second sip, to be fair, part of it is humor, but that second sip was extremely smooth, but it lasts the entire way down in a great way. Good for you guys. Glass B at $90, Old Forester barrel strength at 133 proof. So age-wise, I think both of these are non-age stated, so I'm going to stick with bang for the buck where it was. That 121 on the Blue Note, that can hold its own against 133, which, good for them. Yeah, I enjoyed both. The scores are there. Hopefully I was descriptive as I could be and helped you all out. So when you go to the store and you see the store pick of the Blue Note uncut, unfiltered, and the Old Forester barrel strength, you're a little wiser. That's what we're here for. Definitely, like I said, like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, could put up with it, are in the mood to be charitable. All of those are more than welcome. Leave a comment if you disagree or if you have a different substitute. But we had a high proof, just absolute slugfest in my mouth and tonsils. Dear Father. I'm gonna go stumble upstairs at this point. We did the like and subscribe thing. Keep tuning in, keep interacting. Until the next House Call Wednesday, cheers.